Welcome back in to the Friday Night 360 AZ preview show. We are joined now by Millennium head coach Lamar Early. He's going to help us take a look at this 5A state title game between Notre Dame Prep and Centennial. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good. We're great.
Thanks for having me.
It's state title week. We're excited. Things are going great. So let's start out first, Coach. First 9-3 season you've had here, and you made a playoff appearance. Last year, you went 4-6. You had 8 total wins in the previous 2 seasons before this year. What is your biggest takeaway from the 2018 season?
Well, the boys, they bought in with a short period of time that we had with the boys, with me and my coaching staff, and the boys buying into what we were feeding them, and and then also just trusting us. Being a new staff, and like I said, going back to just being short-lived at the time, they're just trusting us.
You had one of the more memorable sound bites on this show earlier this year where you said your team was embracing the suck, the tough workouts in the off season, the times that, the bright lights weren't on. It was all behind the scenes, but they were setting themselves up for that 9-3 season. Just how do you see them continuing to do that as you enter this off season?
Well, it's funny. We talked about that because we talked about that already here after the season, and that was the one thing I said. We embraced the suck, and they saw the results of hard work, and now they're more, if I could say, more amped to get after it, and because they see what it can potentially lead to.
Good stuff there, Coach. Let's focus over now to this 5A game. Jake Smith for Notre Dame Prep has had an incredible year. You were able to limit him in the postseason when you played the Saints. What will it take for the Coyotes to do that, to make sure that they are able to limit this playmaker for Notre Dame?
Well, Jake Smith is a phenomenal player. Watched him on film. Of course, got to see him up close. But also Centennial has some players over there that I believe that can match up with him. I think it's going to be a great matchup between their secondary and Jake Smith. And I'm more excited about that D-line and the offensive line of Notre Dame going at it to see that. But I really think it's going to be a great matchup between those two.
When you look at this Centennial offense, their run game has evolved to spreading it out between a few more guys. Last year it was just Zidane Thomas. This year they're getting the ball to a few more guys, and that pass game has evolved as well. What is it about this Coyote offense that impresses you?
Well, they're well coached, number one, and they do. They have athletes all over the field, and they execute their game plan to the T, and. When you play them, you have to come in there and you have to play your A game. They're, like I said, they're well coached and they execute.
When you go up against the Centennial defense that gave up 48 points in the regular season, what do they do differently that other defenses may not do? Maybe as you see other teams throughout the season.
They don't make too many mistakes. I'll tell you that they don't miss a lot of tackles. They're aligned where they should be, and they fly to the ball. They fly to the ball, and they want to make you uncomfortable. And as you can see, they're undefeated, and a lot of teams, they made uncomfortable. And then that's the one thing I just say about their defense. They get after it.
When you look at this 5A state title game, what are your keys to the game here?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
When you're looking at this 5A game between Notre Dame Prep and Centennial, what are your keys to the game? What's it going to take for one of these teams to take the crown?
I think it's going to be ball control and the team that has the less turnovers is going to win the ball game. Those two things right there. Looking at after playing both of those guys, because they have TOP, time of possession, and I've watched their films. They control it. So it's going to see who's going to come off the field 3 and outs, turnovers, and who's going to control the ball.
All right, Coach. Good stuff. We appreciate the time. Enjoy the off season. We'll see you next year.
Oh yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
That was Millennium head coach Lamar Early. When you look at these two teams, I think it's really interesting. They both are undefeated. Yeah. I think that's something that kind of has slid under the radar when we've discussed this matchup. Obviously, Millennium saw Notre Dame Prep in the playoffs. Notre Dame Prep gave them a tough time, even though they were able to limit Jake Smith. When you're looking at this game, he obviously mentioned that it's going to be about the turnovers and the time of possession here. What are your keys here?
I think that time of possession is going to be a huge factor, especially for the Saints. I've said on AZ Audibles a couple of times that Centennial, their strategy is to get the defense off the field as quickly as possible. So then, or the offense as quickly as possible. So then there is pressure on that opposing offense and defense, and then they start to get tired, and that's when they really start to take over the game. So I think that's going to be a huge key. I think that Centennial has the players to have multiple guys on Jake Smith at times, and I think that's going to be huge for Jake Farrell. He's going to need to make some plays with Zach Gray, their other very good receiver. He's a big-bodied receiver, could be a matchup problem. And Dominic Mastro, the running back, who is he goes pedal to the metal at all times. He's not afraid of contact. Sometimes it seems like he kind of embraces it, and you're going up against a defense that's going to do that. So I think that that's going to be a huge thing, and I think with last year's game, it just felt like Centennial got out to such a quick start that they were already playing up by a couple of scores, and they were just able to play their game. So I think that Notre Dame Prep needs to come out, be kind of that hotter team, get a couple scores, at least get a couple sustained drives to try to put Centennial on their heels a little bit, because I feel like they really haven't had to do that much this year. So, Coach mentioned being uncomfortable. That's what the Centennial defense does. If Notre Dame can somehow flip that over and make them uncomfortable, you never really know how a team's going to react the first time that happens in a big game. I
didn't end up getting to see Notre Dame Prep this year. I think I was supposed to go out there in the semifinals against Williams Field, and I ended up staying at that Chandler Highland game through till the end. So I didn't get to see Notre Dame Prep in the playoffs, but I did get to see Centennial. It was that first round against Sunny Slope. You saw some of the highlights earlier. That defense just came out right away and was unbelievable. And I believe we talked about how that Chandler defense didn't come out in that Highland game, and we'll talk more about Chandler and Perry in 6A coming up next. But this Centennial defense, when they come out fast and you give them that leeway you mentioned they took it away last year, they're going to be able to do that. So Notre Dame's Prep has to come out and figure out how to slow them down right away.
And I think with Notre Dame Prep, the one thing that I took away talking to Jake Smith last week at Media Day, I asked him about the defense. They've given up 14 points over the last 2 games against a good Williams Field team, against a very good Millennium team. What's been the key for that? And he said in the first half of the season, the offense was bailing the defense out. Now the defense is bailing the offense out. Nobody can bail anybody out here in this situation in a state championship game. All 3 facets have to be there, but the defense, I think, is coming ready to play against a really tough Centennial team. So it should be, I think it's going to be a different game from last year, just because, as Coach mentioned, it's more of a slugfest. I think Notre Dame's bringing kind of a tougher mentality than maybe they did last year. But this is also interesting what Ralph said about how it's the same name on the front, but a lot of these players. With this game, I feel like that's the biggest case, because Notre Dame graduated over 30 seniors. Centennial has
a completely new defense.
Yes, Centennial has a ton of new faces from last year's team. Zidane Thomas has gone. A lot of those key figures, Dom Hampton, Ruben Beltran. So it is kind of, I feel like this game's a little more different than the regular cast of characters that we may see in like the 6A or 4A.
Right. It's an undefeated season. Who's going to keep it and maintain that? And 2 well-coached teams. Predictions, let's get to that. I'm going with Centennial. I can't get that Centennial defense when I saw them in the first round of the playoffs out of my head. I think they're unbelievable. So I'm going to have to go with Centennial.
I think that Jake Smith will probably be Player of the Year this year. I'm going to go Centennial. I think it's going to be closer than last year, but just I can't, like you said, you can't stop thinking about them in the opening round. I can't stop thinking about giving up 48 points over the span of 10 games, including Bishop Gorman. So that's kind of where I'm taking that from.
And it was interesting last week at Media Day talking to all these guys, and when they were describing these games that were coming up, they all described them as a dogfight. And out of these 3 matchups, I think this one's going to be the biggest dogfight. So coming up next, we're going to have Basha head coach Chris McDonald. He's going to break down this 6A state title game between Perry and Chandler.